Today, more meaningless unemployment numbers. Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics, one that is posts covering finance and problem news with a distinctively Australian flavour. We've just got the latest ABS series today on the labour markets for September. But below the hood, the key to understanding these numbers is to look at how many people have dropped out of the statistics due to the ABS definition of employment. Around 380,000 people have disappeared from the system because they're not currently available and actively seeking employment, while many more are working less hours than they want, meaning they're caught in the underemployment measure. So if you put things in the right buckets, we estimate the true unemployment rate is closer to 8%, but hey, that would make a very poor headline, so we continue to fool people with an artificially suppressed rate. The Australian Bureau of Statistics said that seasonally adjusted employment fell by 138,000 people, or 1.1%, between August and September 2021, according to those figures released today. And they said extended lockdowns in New South Wales, Victoria and the Australian Capital Territory have seen employment and hours worked both drop back below their pre-pandemic levels. In September 21, there were 111,000 fewer people employed, or 0.9%, and 2% fewer hours worked than in March 2020. With a combined share of close to 60% of Australia's employed population, labour market changes in New South Wales and Victoria continue to have a large influence on the national figures. In September, there were large falls in employment in Victoria, down 123,000 people, and New South Wales down 25,000 people, following the 173,000 decline in August. That was partially offset by a 31,000 increase in Queensland as conditions there recovered from the lockdown in early August. The participation rate fell 0.7 percentage points to 64.5%. That was the third consecutive monthly decline from the near historic high of 66.2% in June 2021, and continue the pattern of large falls in participation during lockdowns. The unemployment rate rose 0.1 percentage points from 4.5% to 4.6% in September. The low national unemployment rate continues to reflect reduced participation during the recent lockdowns rather than strong labour market conditions, the ABS said. The fall in the national participation rate was again underpinned by large drops in parts of the country with lockdowns in effect. The participation rates for Victoria and the Australian Capital Territory both fell by 1.9 percentage points, and in New South Wales by a further 0.6 percentage points, following a 2.5 percentage point drop last month. In September, New South Wales and the Australian Capital Territory both recorded their lowest participation rates since the pandemic began. Victoria's participation rate also fell, but remained above the previous low during the second wave of lockdowns last year. Over the past 3 months, participation in the labour force has fallen by over 330,000 people, with employment falling by 281,000 people and unemployment falling by 53,000 people. Beyond people losing their jobs or working reduced or no hours, we continue to see how challenging it is for people without work to remain active within the labour market during lockdowns. This was also reflected in the mutual obligations for job seekers living in lockdown areas in September. Hours worked increased by 0.9% in September. That's a slight recovery from the fall in August, which was a drop of 3.7%. This partly reflects the strong recovery in Queensland, up 5.4%, as conditions there recovered from the lockdown in early August. Hours worked also increased in New South Wales, up 2.7%, following 2 months of large falls, 6.5% down in August and 7% down in July. That was underpinned by increases in people working full-time hours, as well as a slight recovery among people who have been working fewer hours than usual in August. There were large falls in hours worked in Victoria, down 3.6%, and the ACT down 10.5%. In the Australian Capital Territory, hours worked fell by 10.5% in September, compared with a 3.2% fall in employment. This highlights the extent to which people had reduced hours or no work through the lockdowns without necessarily losing their jobs. It also shows that hours continue to provide the best indicator of the extent of labour market impacts from lockdowns, the ABS said. The national underemployment rate dropped by less than 0.1 percentage points to 9.2% in September. There were large increases in the underemployment rate in Victoria, up 0.9 percentage points to 10%, and the ACT up 1.4 percentage points to 8.5%, accentuated by increases in underemployment and falls in participation. The underemployment rate remained elevated in New South Wales at 10.2%. The significant fall in the participation rate was due to the way job losses are being recorded. Because people aren't looking for work during lockdowns, they count as outside the labour force rather than being unemployed. In September, New South Wales and the ACT both recorded their lowest participation rates since the pandemic began. Victoria's participation rate also fell, but remained above the previous low during the second lockdown last month. Over the past 3 months, participation in the labour force has fallen by over 330,000 people, with employment falling by 281,000 people and unemployment falling by 53,000 people. Beyond people losing their jobs or working reduced or no hours, we continue to see how challenging it is for people without work to remain active within the labour market during lockdowns. More importantly, it does not necessarily follow that people outside the workforce will choose to come back as we unlock. And what happens to the 1.7 million people or so who are receiving temporary government support thanks to COVID relief payments? Those, of course, are now being withdrawn as we reach certain vaccination hurdle rates. We have a long, long way back to get back to normal. And unfortunately, these statistics really don't tell us much at all. I'm Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Many thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.